Before 2026 starts, there is a quiet moment waiting for you. It is standing just behind the noise of the year, behind the habits you repeated without thinking, behind the fears you learned to live with. This moment does not shout. It does not demand. It simply asks whether you are willing to arrive in the next chapter lighter than you are now. Time does not change people on its own. Years pass, calendars turn, but transformation only happens when a person decides to meet time with intention. What you do before this year closes will echo into everything that follows. Begin by releasing the need to carry every memory as if it were a responsibility. Some memories were lessons, not luggage. You have honored them long enough. The pain you survived does not need daily proof of your loyalty. You can remember without reopening wounds. Let the memories that taught you stay, and allow the ones that only hurt to loosen their grip. Healing does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to bleed every time the past calls your name. When you choose to stop rehearsing old suffering, you make space for new strength to take root. Then forgive, not because the world suddenly became fair, but because your heart deserves peace more than it deserves resentment. Forgiveness is not approval. It is not permission. It is a decision to stop letting someone else's actions control your inner weather. Anger can feel powerful, but it is heavy. It slows your steps and clouds your vision. Forgiveness lightens the body and sharpens the spirit. When you forgive, you reclaim energy that was trapped in yesterday and return it to today where it belongs. Next, learn to sit with yourself without distraction. Silence is not empty, it is honest. In quiet moments, you hear truths that noise has been covering. You discover what you actually feel, not what you tell others you feel. You meet the parts of yourself that have been waiting patiently for attention. Before the next year begins, practice being alone without being lonely. Build a friendship with yourself that does not depend on applause or validation. When you are comfortable in your own presence, you stop begging others to confirm your worth. Speak kindly to yourself, especially when you make mistakes. The voice you use on yourself becomes the foundation of your confidence. If your inner language is cruel, no amount of praise from the outside will feel real. Replace insults with instruction. Replace shame with curiosity. Growth thrives in encouragement, not punishment. You are allowed to be a learner. You are allowed to try, fail, and try again without stripping yourself of dignity. Self-respect is not built by perfection, but by compassion toward your own becoming. Choose honesty over comfort. There are truths you have avoided because they threatened familiar patterns. But comfort that requires silence is not comfort, it is confinement. Be honest about what no longer fits your life. Be honest about the relationships that drain you, the goals that no longer inspire you, the routines that keep you small. Truth may disrupt your routine, but it will never betray your soul. When you face reality with courage, you give yourself permission to design a life that actually supports your growth. Learn to say no without explanation. Your boundaries do not need justification to be valid. Every yes you give costs time, energy, and focus. Spend those resources wisely. You are not selfish for protecting your capacity. You are responsible. When you stop overextending yourself to earn approval, you discover how much strength you actually have. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks that you control. Decide who gets access to your time and spirit and who does not. Before the year ends, take responsibility for your choices without drowning in guilt. Accountability is empowering when it is paired with grace. You can acknowledge where you went wrong without defining yourself by it. Growth begins the moment you stop blaming circumstances and start shaping responses. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can rewrite your patterns. Each decision you make now becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Choose consciously even when it feels uncomfortable. Invest in your inner life as much as you invest in your survival. Feeding the body is necessary, but feeding the spirit is essential. Read words that expand you. Listen to voices that challenge you to rise. Create something without worrying about whether it will be admired. Creativity is not about performance, it is about expression. When you give your soul room to breathe, you begin to feel alive in ways that money and approval cannot provide. Release the habit of comparison. Someone else's journey is not a measuring stick for your worth. You do not know the full cost of their success or the quiet battles behind their smiles. Comparison steals joy and replaces it with impatience. Progress looks different on every path. Honor your pace. Trust that slow growth is still growth. When you focus on becoming better rather than becoming someone else, your confidence settles into something unshakable. Practice gratitude, not as a performance, but as a discipline. Gratitude trains the mind to recognize abundance even in imperfect circumstances. It does not deny hardship, it balances it. When you name what is working, what is growing, what is healing, you strengthen hope. Gratitude reminds you that life has been offering you moments of grace all along. Carry that awareness into the new year, and challenges will feel less like punishments and more like invitations to grow. As the year closes, let go of the idea that you must arrive at the next one fully healed, fully confident, fully certain. Growth is not a finish line, it is a rhythm. You are allowed to enter the future still learning. What matters is that you arrive intentional, honest, and open. Lay down what you no longer need. Pick up what strengthens you. Walk forward without apology. The next year will meet you exactly as you are. Meet it with clarity. Meet it with courage. Meet it with a heart that is lighter because you chose to release what no longer served you. Change does not happen because time moves forward. It happens because you do. Perfection is often praised as a virtue, but more often it becomes a quiet barrier that keeps people frozen in place. It creates the illusion that excellence requires flawlessness, and that action should only come after complete certainty. This belief sounds disciplined, but underneath it lies fear. The fear of being seen trying, the fear of being judged, the fear of falling short. Progress offers a different path. It does not demand that you be ready, it asks that you be willing. It values motion over mastery and growth over image. When you chase perfection, you delay your life. You spend excessive time planning, correcting, refining, and preparing, believing that one more adjustment will finally make you worthy of beginning. Progress understands that clarity is not a prerequisite for action. Clarity is created by action. Each step forward reveals information you could never access by standing still. Movement teaches what thinking cannot. Perfection turns mistakes into threats. One error can feel like confirmation that you are not capable, not talented, not enough. This mindset makes growth feel dangerous because it ties your self-worth to performance. Progress separates who you are from what you produce. It allows mistakes to exist as part of learning rather than evidence of failure. It reframes errors as data, not judgments. Many people abandon goals not because they lack discipline, but because they expect results too quickly. Perfection demands immediate success, visible outcomes, and external validation. Progress respects time. It understands that meaningful change is often slow, subtle, and uneven. It teaches patience without passivity and effort without self-punishment. Choosing progress changes the way you talk to yourself. Instead of harsh criticism, you begin to practice reflection. Instead of asking why you are not better already, you ask what you learned today. This shift builds resilience. You stop collapsing under pressure because your inner voice becomes a source of support instead of attack. Perfection thrives on comparison. It constantly measures you against others, convincing you that you are behind, late, or inferior. Progress turns your attention inward. It compares you only to who you were before. It honors personal pace and individual context. When comparison loses its grip, energy returns to where it belongs, your own path. Progress also encourages consistency. Small actions done regularly create more change than intense effort done occasionally. Perfection waits for motivation. Progress relies on commitment. It understands that motivation is unreliable, but habits are dependable. Even on days when enthusiasm is absent, progress continues quietly, shaping your future through repetition. When you choose progress, you become more adaptable. Setbacks no longer feel catastrophic, they feel informative. You learn how to adjust, recalibrate, and continue. You stop quitting when conditions are imperfect because you no longer expect smoothness. You expect growth, and growth includes resistance. Perfection often leads to isolation. It makes you hide your process, your questions, your uncertainty. Progress invites connection. It allows you to learn openly, ask for help, and receive feedback. You realize that growth does not require proving strength, it requires practicing it. There is courage in choosing progress. It takes bravery to show up before you feel confident. It takes humility to admit you are still learning. Perfection protects ego. Progress strengthens character. Each imperfect attempt builds trust in yourself, not because you always succeed, but because you continue. Progress also changes your relationship with time. You stop rushing toward an imagined finish line and start valuing the daily work. You understand that who you are becoming is shaped by what you practice consistently. Each day becomes meaningful not because it is perfect, but because it contributes. Letting go of perfection allows joy to return. You stop postponing satisfaction until some future milestone. You begin to notice improvement. You celebrate effort. You feel alive in the process rather than exhausted by expectation. Progress creates room for gratitude alongside ambition. Progress does not mean lowering standards. It means redefining them. You still aim high, but you do not demand flawlessness. You expect growth, learning, and responsibility balanced with compassion. This balance creates sustainability. You do not burn out chasing impossible ideals. You build steadily instead. When you commit to progress, you commit to becoming. You accept that growth is non-linear. Some days will feel strong, others slow. You learn to rest without quitting, to pause without retreating. Progress allows flexibility without losing direction. Over time, progress builds confidence that is rooted, not fragile. You trust yourself because you have evidence that you will keep going. That trust reduces fear. It makes trying feel safer than staying stuck. You become someone who acts despite uncertainty. Progress often happens quietly. There may be no applause, no immediate recognition. But beneath the surface, habits are forming. Skills are strengthening. Perspective is shifting. One day you realize you are no longer who you used to be. The change did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated. Choosing progress over perfection is choosing movement over fear, learning over pride, patience over pressure. It is choosing to participate in your life instead of waiting to perfect it. Each step forward reinforces the belief that change is possible. Each attempt reshapes your identity. Progress asks you to begin where you are, with what you have, as you are. It asks you to trust that improvement is built through action, not avoidance. It asks you to keep going even when results are invisible. In choosing progress, you choose growth that lasts. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, as if the absence of words means the absence of strength. But silence, when chosen deliberately, can become one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. It is not emptiness, it is control. It is the decision to no longer explain, justify, or defend yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. Silence is what happens when you realize that your energy is too valuable to be spent on conversations that lead nowhere. For a long time, many people are taught that they must respond to everything. Every accusation demands an explanation. Every misunderstanding requires correction. Every insult deserves a defense. This belief trains the nervous system to stay on alert, always preparing for the next exchange, the next argument, the next emotional negotiation. Silence interrupts that cycle. It says, without speaking, that not everything requires your participation. Some things lose their power the moment you refuse to engage. A powerful boundary is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not threaten or plead. It simply exists. Silence works the same way. When you stop responding to disrespect, manipulation, or constant demands, you are not avoiding conflict. You are redefining access. You are teaching others how to treat you, not through lectures, but through consistent behavior. People pay attention when your reactions change. They notice when you no longer rush to explain yourself. Silence also protects your inner world. Words can expose parts of you that are still healing. Explaining your pain to the wrong audience can reopen wounds instead of closing them. Silence gives you time to process without interference. It allows clarity to form before expression. When you speak less, you listen more, not just to others, but to yourself. You begin to recognize what truly matters and what was never worth your breath. There is a difference between silence that comes from fear and silence that comes from strength. Fearful silence hides, shrinks, and suppresses truth. Powerful silence stands steady. It does not deny reality. It simply refuses to argue with it. It does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you are choosing when and where your voice will be used. That choice is freedom. Many conflicts survive because both sides keep feeding them with words. Silence starves unnecessary drama. It removes the fuel of reaction. When you stop responding emotionally, situations either resolve themselves or reveal their true nature. Some people will step back. Others will escalate. Both outcomes provide information. Silence becomes a filter, separating those who respect your boundaries from those who benefit from crossing them. Silence is also a form of self-trust. It means you no longer need external validation to confirm your reality. You do not need everyone to agree with you in order to feel secure. You know what you know. You feel what you feel. That inner certainty makes constant explanation unnecessary. When you trust yourself, you stop trying to convince others. In relationships, silence can shift dynamics dramatically. When you stop over-communicating, over-apologizing, or over-clarifying, you change the balance of power. You stop chasing understanding from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop repeating the same points to ears that were never listening. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting responsibility back to where it belongs. Choosing silence does not mean you accept mistreatment. It means you refuse to negotiate your dignity. It means you understand that arguing with someone who lacks empathy will not produce respect. Silence draws a line that words often blur. It shows that you are done participating in cycles that drain you. There is also healing in silence. When you are constantly explaining yourself, you stay tied to the past. Silence allows detachment. It gives you space to release resentment, anger, and the urge to be right. In that quiet space, your nervous system begins to calm. Your thoughts slow down. You start responding instead of reacting. Silence gives your body permission to rest from emotional labor. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first, especially for those who were conditioned to be agreeable, accessible, and emotionally available at all times. It may feel like you are doing something wrong. But discomfort does not mean danger. It often means growth. You are breaking patterns that once kept you safe but now keep you stuck. Not everyone will understand your silence, and they do not need to. Some will interpret it as distance. Others will call it arrogance. Some will feel threatened by it. Their interpretations are not your responsibility. Silence teaches you that you do not have to manage other people's reactions to your boundaries. Silence also sharpens discernment. When you speak less, you notice more. You observe how people behave without your guidance. You see who respects you without needing reminders. You learn who values access to you and who only valued control. Silence reveals truths that words often hide. This kind of boundary is especially powerful because it cannot be argued with. People can debate words, they can twist explanations, they can challenge statements. But silence offers nothing to push against. It stands firm without aggression. It communicates finality without cruelty. Over time, silence builds authority. People sense when your words are intentional, not reactive. When you do speak, your voice carries more weight because it is not constantly spent. You stop filling space out of anxiety. You begin speaking from clarity. That shift changes how you are heard. Silence does not mean you will never speak up. It means you choose when speaking is necessary and when it is a waste of energy. It means you reserve your voice for conversations that have mutual respect, openness, and purpose. Everything else does not get access. In choosing silence, you choose yourself. You choose peace over performance. You choose boundaries over explanations. You choose clarity over chaos. And in that quiet choice, you begin to feel your power settle in, steady and unshaken, not needing approval, not seeking permission, simply existing with certainty and calm, rooted in the understanding that not every response deserves a voice and not every moment requires your words. The life you want is not hidden from you, but it is guarded. It does not open easily or respond to wishing alone. It waits for a version of you that is willing to act with courage, even when certainty is missing. Bravery is not loud confidence or fearlessness. It is movement in the presence of fear. It is choosing growth when comfort is available, choosing truth when silence would be easier, choosing yourself when approval feels safer. The future you imagine requires a self who is willing to stretch beyond what feels familiar. Most people do not lack dreams. They lack the courage to disappoint the version of themselves that learned how to survive. Survival teaches you to stay alert, to avoid risk, to keep things predictable. It rewards caution and punishes vulnerability. But the life you want is not built by survival alone. It is built by intention, and intention requires bravery. It asks you to question patterns that once kept you safe but now keep you small. It asks you to step out of routines that feel secure but quietly drain your spirit. A braver you is someone who stops waiting for permission. You do not need a perfect plan, universal support, or guaranteed outcomes. Waiting for those things only delays the life that is trying to meet you halfway. Courage begins when you decide that your desire to grow is stronger than your fear of failing. It begins when you stop asking whether you are ready and start asking whether you are willing. Bravery also shows up in honesty. It takes courage to admit when something is no longer working, especially when you have invested time, energy, or identity into it. It takes courage to say you want more, when you have been taught to be grateful for less. It takes courage to acknowledge that a chapter has ended, even if you do not yet know what comes next. The braver you does not pretend. It looks at reality clearly and chooses not to lie to itself. The life you want will challenge your attachment to comfort. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it often asks you to trade long-term fulfillment for short-term ease. Bravery is choosing discomfort with purpose over comfort with regret. It is choosing the difficult conversation, the unfamiliar path, the honest decision. Growth does not always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels awkward, lonely, and uncertain. But courage is not the absence of those feelings, it is the decision to move anyway. A braver you also learns how to endure uncertainty. You may not know how everything will unfold, and that not knowing can feel unsettling. But clarity rarely comes before action. It comes from engagement, from trial, from experience. Courage allows you to take the next step without demanding to see the entire staircase. It trusts that learning will happen along the way. Fear will still be present. Courage does not eliminate fear. It redefines your relationship with it. Instead of letting fear decide your limits, You let it inform your preparation. You listen without obeying. You acknowledge the risk without surrendering your agency. The braver you understands that fear is a signal, not a command. The life you want also demands courage in relationships. It asks you to stop shrinking to keep the peace. It asks you to speak your needs without apology and to walk away when respect is consistently missing. Bravery means accepting that not everyone will understand your growth and some will resist it. Outgrowing people, spaces, and roles is painful, but staying where you no longer belong slowly erodes your sense of self. Courage chooses alignment over familiarity. There is bravery in choosing discipline over impulse. The life you want is built through daily choices, not dramatic moments. Showing up when motivation fades, honoring commitments you made to yourself, and staying consistent when results are invisible all require courage. Discipline is not restriction, it is devotion. It is choosing what matters most over what feels easiest right now. A braver you also allows yourself to be seen. Hiding feels safer, but it limits connection and opportunity. Courage invites vulnerability not as exposure without boundaries, but as authenticity without performance. It means allowing your voice to be heard, your ideas to be shared, your presence to be felt. You stop waiting until you are flawless to show up. You show up as you are and trust that growth will refine you. The life you want will require you to fail forward. Failure is not a verdict, it is feedback. Courage reframes failure as part of the process rather than proof of inadequacy. Each attempt teaches you something about your strengths, your limits, and your resilience. The braver you does not quit because something went wrong. It adjusts, learns, and continues. There is also courage in patience. In a world that celebrates speed, choosing steady progress takes strength. You may not see immediate validation. You may not receive applause. But bravery is staying committed even when recognition is delayed. It is trusting the process when outcomes are still forming. The life you want is often built quietly, long before it becomes visible. A braver you stops outsourcing self-worth. You stop needing constant reassurance to keep moving. You stop allowing other people's doubts to become your own. You learn to anchor confidence internally rather than borrowing it from approval. This does not make you rigid or closed, it makes you grounded. You become responsive instead of reactive. Courage also asks you to let go of identities that no longer fit. You may have been the reliable one, the quiet one, the agreeable one, the strong one. Those roles may have served you once, but they do not have to define you forever. The life you want may require you to become someone unfamiliar even to yourself. That transition can feel disorienting. Bravery allows you to stay present through that discomfort instead of retreating to old versions out of habit. The braver you understands that growth is not linear. There will be moments of doubt, setbacks, and exhaustion. Courage is not measured by never struggling. It is measured by continuing despite struggle. You learn to rest without quitting, to pause without abandoning your direction. You give yourself grace without losing momentum. Choosing courage also means choosing responsibility. You take ownership of your decisions, your habits, and your direction. You stop blaming circumstances for everything and start asking what is within your control. This is not about self-criticism, it is about empowerment. Responsibility places the steering wheel back in your hands. The life you want is not waiting for a perfect version of you. It is waiting for a willing one. A you who is brave enough to try, to risk, to grow, to change. Courage compounds over time. Each brave choice makes the next one easier. Each act of alignment strengthens your trust in yourself. You do not need to become fearless. You need to become honest, committed, and courageous enough to move while fear is present. The braver you is not someone else. It is you choosing differently, responding intentionally, stepping forward even when your voice shakes, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the path feels lonely. knowing that the life you want is not built by waiting to feel ready, but by becoming bold enough to begin.